He gave spiritual articles as well as many contemporary articles in the editorial of newspapers. Now, as a person, he had a very mixed bag of reactions from his readers plus who knew him. But moreover, he was among the eminent writers and editors of our country. So let me tell you about this lesson that he had written, The Portrait of a Lady. It's just a part of a semi-autobiography, means his own autobiography, a part of autobiography where he has mentioned about his grandmother, your grandmother also. If someday you will write about your grandmother, how she was, you will also explain like the relationship between you and your grandmother. So he has also mentioned in this autobiography about the portrait of a lady, means his grandmother, is a part of an autobiography by Khushwant Singh ji. Okay, now autobiography you all know, Atmakatha, autobiography, and biography or biopics are the ones which other persons write. So the difference between autobiography and biography is that autobiography is written by self and biography is written by someone else about the account of a life of a person. Now what does he reveal in this lesson? What does he tell about us, tell about the grandmother in this lesson is that how beautifully unfolds the relationship with his grandmother, how in phases the relationship also weakens, but he has presented before us the pen portrait of his grandmother. A bit of mention about his grandfather is also there, but he never saw his grandfather. Then how we also go through relationships with others is also being mentioned. Now let us come on to the characters in this lesson. The first one is the grandmother, the protagonist about whom the story is being mentioned. Khushwant Singh's grandmother is described as an extremely religious person, and she is always reading scriptures, she reads the rosary beads, she reads many other mantras. So likewise she is being portrayed as a religious lady, plus she is a very a lady with a means a conservative way of thinking. Okay, she is a very kind lady. She was short, fat and slightly bent. Her face was wrinkled, now wrinkled all over the face, wrinkles were there. She was always dressed in spotless white clothes, always she dressed in spotless white clothes. Okay, means she was widow, plus she was in the old age, so that's why she was always wearing the white clothes. In the village, she took care of the needs of the author when he was a child. Village, you also know, the country life. I'm also right now in my village, so it's like country life. Okay, so how as a child the caretaker was the grandmother itself when his parents were not there in the village. Now Khushwant Singh ji is the next character in the story. By the way, other characters are also mentioned, but these are the two highlighted characters, means his account of his grandmother. So Khushwant Singh ji, he recounts his childhood days and his relationship with his grandmother. Okay, so what is his relationship with the grandmother? It is being told in this story. Now let me explain about the story. Just before that, I presume that you all might have read the story. So the portrait of a lady. So let me tell you how this story begins. The story begins with the author remembering his grandmother and grandfather. Now he mentions that how does he remember his grandmother and grandfather. Now grandmother is the one whom he had seen, could never had been more older than what he had seen. Okay, the author recalls his grandmother as a very old lady. For the 20 years that the author had known his grandmother, he had found her old and wrinkled. All the 20 years that he had recounted, he in his memory he means while he was living in his early 20s, his grandmother was existing there. Okay, it was hard for him to believe that she had once been young and pretty. It's every now and then your grandmother, your grandfather tells an account of their younger days or childhood days. So how could a child, or how could a psychology of a child would allow that this old wrinkled face can ever be in a young or good face? So that's why Khushwant ji also tells about that. Khushwant Singh's grandfather portrait. He never saw his grandfather, but his portrait hung, okay, on the wall of a drawing room. He wore a very big turban. Turban, pagdi, okay, turban. Usually Sardars wear the turban, okay, hung on the wall of a drawing room. Like everyone has a drawing room in the house. Likewise, there in the village, in the drawing room, the portrait of his grandfather was there, but he has portrayed all throughout the story about his grandmother, means the account of the writing. He wore a big turban, his clothes were loose, he looked as at least 100 years old. Means in that particular portrait of his grandmother, during that time the photographs were not there, so the portrait might have been there, or black and white photograph big was there, so in which he looked as if he was very old, like around 100 years. So if on account of his grandmother who told that she had earlier been young and whatsoever, how could a young girl like his grandmother in her age could have been married to a very old person like his grandfather's portrait? Okay, means his grandfather was looking in that portrait, very big beard, white beard, turban and other things. He was like very old, 100 years of age person. Okay, looking at his portrait, one could not imagine him in his youth with his wife and children. Okay, he was not able to correlate it with his grandmother and children, means his father or someone else. Okay, like that. Now the author's grandmother, about grandmother, what does he tell about the physical appearance of his grandmother? Now, the thought of the grandmother being young and pretty was almost revolting to him. She was short, fat, and slightly bent in stature. Her face was a crisscross of wrinkles. Crisscross everywhere. You also see the old persons with wrinkled faces. Okay, her silvery white hair was scattered over the wrinkled face. Now, her small hairs, means in the old age, the hairs look like silvery. They are that much whitish or grayish that they look like silver, and they shine. So that was how it was smothered over the face also, somewhere like that. So the author remembered her hobbling around the house in spotless white clothes. Every now and then she was not walking, it was hobbling, means she was not quite straightforward. She had a very hump on her the back, so that's why she had a bit of problem while walking, but she hobbled around the house, okay, with one of her hands on the back and the other hand reading the beads of the rosary. Now she always had this particular habit of reading the beads of rosary. Okay, now that was inaudible prayer. To the author, she could never have been pretty, but she reflected a divine beauty. To the author, she could never have been beautiful, but whatsoever face was there, it was like a divine beauty, means all over the face was spiritually enlightened. She was a religious lady. So till today this lesson is here. I will deliver you the next lesson in the next day. Have a nice day. Stay safe, stay at home, study from home. See you.